It is now time to elevate.
Time to motivate.
Let's engage. It is now time to elevate.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Engage, Motivate, and Elevate. I'm your host, Monet Fox. We have such a great show today, and this week is actually super special. I can't move forward until I give a super happy birthday shout out to my son, who turned 13 this past Wednesday, July 21st. I'm super proud of you and super excited to be your mom. Happy birthday. We have a really great show. We're going to be talking about prison reform. We have an ex-inmate who was incorrectly charged of murder and served a very lengthy sentence, which would have been life without parole, but was able to be exonerated. Wonderful brother. Please give it up for Mr. Darrell Jones. So welcome, Darrell. Thank you so much for being a part of my show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm super excited to talk to you. I mean, everybody is eager to hear all the great things that you're doing now, but I do want to start with just kind of going over where you came from this. Like, I know you're working in the mayor's office now. You have a great opportunity. Talk to us about how this opportunity even came about, why it was granted to you, what your life was, even with the incarceration and things like that. We want to hear what your specific story was.
Well, my particular story is still going on. It's an unending story, but it's, as you may know, I was incarcerated for 32 years for a murder that I never committed. I didn't even know who the person was that was the person that killed. That's how far removed it was from me. And, during that process, and I'll probably come back to that, but during that process, while I was locked up, I began to do what Malcolm said, prison is second to college. So I used it that way. And, I started my own magazine in prison. I did 2 albums from prison, won a United Nations Awards for one. I just constantly used that environment as a study place,
Right.
So, while I was fighting the case and trying to come home, I was also living it as though I was home. So that's how I started my own magazine.
That makes a big difference when you're incarcerated to, I hear a lot of times you have to settle into your bed, right? People like kind of use that expression, you have to settle into it. So it's kind of like, well, how are you gonna, how you were living in the streets, you have to decide, how you're gonna live in this place and what you're gonna be doing and get on a routine of some sort, right? Is that the way that your mind kind of processed that?
That's the way I processed it. I looked at it that the things they wouldn't take. I always looked at how the prison operated, and we had once here in the maximum security at Shirley, I believe it started, but the police union actually stood up when the government, at that time, I think it was around Weld or something, so it must have been Walpole. But during that time, they were trying to, change so many things and take so many things. So they took our phones, they had changed the process on how we go to canteen, everything. They were taking everything, stripping it down. And this Weld guy at that time was on busting rocks, like, hey, make prisoners bust rocks. But when it came down to taking the weights and the gym away, I noticed that the union came out in the paper and started saying, don't take their gym away and their weights away, because that's what we use to basically control them.
Right.
And that stayed with me like, you know what? This is what they're doing. They don't mind you in here lifting weights and doing all that, because that's part of the prison process. But anything outside of that, where you can think about what's happening to you, they're totally against. When you can create a better option for yourself. So I learned a valuable lesson from that it's actually tactical for them to keep these mediums there rather than the whole of what we need, So
I just want to backtrack for one quick second. Like, what went wrong, of the many things I'm sure that went wrong? I'm not, with your case 32 years ago or however long that was, what went wrong? Like, why you?
Well, I had everything that could go wrong, went wrong situation. So, I don't even know where to start, but let's just start from my initial trial. I am the only person since 1967 that we found that you can't sit in a docket during a trial, prisoner's docket, because the people wouldn't know that, hey, this guy's under arrest and basically convicted sitting in that prisoner's dock. I sat in the prisoner's dock, which is like a car and a half length away from my lawyer the entire trial. So it was a court-appointed lawyer. I never even sat with the guy. I only spoke to him once. Then come to find out, he didn't even tell me to the third day of trial. So one of the court officers told him, shouldn't you be telling the guy? Come to find out, all of the police that were putting this case on me, he'd been representing them since 1967. So he was representing the same cops and people that were up there trying to put me away and act as though he forgot. And then the third day of trial was like, oh, it just dawned on me.
What's that attorney's name? We need to know.
Elias, but he's dead now. You know what I mean?
Okay. Good. So he don't get no more work. I just want to make sure.
He don't get no more work. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
you had a jacked up lawyer, you know, which is obviously a big deal. You know, this is one of the things that's really important for our community to understand. You know, whether you're hustling or you're working or whatever it is that you're doing, especially if you're doing something that is not up to par. You know what the potential is coming. You know, have money to put away for an attorney.
A real attorney.
You want to be a real attorney. You do not want to be caught in a situation like you, Darrell, where you're going to court, you don't get to see your lawyer. It's a case for murder where you're not even involved.
We're not even involved.
And then you get convicted. Okay, so the 32 years in prison, I think that if I go into detail about it, I'll probably cry. So I don't want to go into too many details, but I do want to understand from when you went into prison to now, knowing that whole time that you were innocent and fighting, and did you have support from your family and friends? Like, what kept you motivated besides your own innocence, or who helped you stay kind of strong and focused on that?
Well, sadly, you know, I always base my survival in prison based on my grandmother, my love for her, because when this originally happened to me, they were doing everything possible just to get this out the way, because they knew it wasn't me. It was no doubt about it. So they offered me at that time a 6 to 8. Yeah. So I would have done 4 years. So they kept trying to make me take this offer on a murder. I would have did 4 years and been home. And I didn't do it. So my grandmother's one word to me was, we didn't do that. She would say, we. You know, she said, we didn't do that. We ain't taking it. And even as a kid, I'm 18 years old, but my faith and belief in her was, I'm rolling with whatever she says, you know. And I never regretted, although it was, 32 years, I never regretted, because I kept my sense of self and I didn't surrender rather. So that's what it's about, to what they were trying to do. If there's a positive thing that came out of the experience of prison at all, if there was anything positive at all, could you name something, or is it all negative? No, I can name lots of things. Like I said, I created a bunch of programs, and so working with the young fellas and trying to discourage them. There were a lot of positive moments in my life, self-created. But I think as far as being in prison itself, the only thing that I really got a grasp on was the idea of family, and and getting closer to family and understanding them better, and really being there for my children as best I could while I was away, and doing their homework with them, and calling their teachers because I was just totally involved in their life. So I was so busy into life that I wasn't focused on what I couldn't do. My motto is making a way out of no way. So that's all I knew since a kid, and so I've always made a way out of no way. So that's how I approached it in there.
And how are your relationships now with your kids and your family? Are you guys close?
Sadly, I was going back to your initial question. Sadly for me, when you said family support, I went in, so this is 85, right? And the beginning of 85. And when I went in 91, I lost my grandmother and my brother 2 weeks apart. They were in the hospital at the same time, in the same hospital. So I took those losses, and I couldn't go to their funerals. Then in 2005, I actually lost my son. He was killed on the streets, so I was taking losses, terrible losses while I was incarcerated for this. And even my son's funeral, unable to go to their funerals, so it was a harsh reality for me, because not only was I in prison and innocent, but everything else was already taken. But then to take the idea that I couldn't even be there for my family in death or to say goodbye is the corona effect before anybody out here even knew what it was. This world is now getting sadly a taste of how this thing would work. And this was the process. So it was hard during those times, you know. So family support I had, but I was losing family at the same time. So it was really for me to figure out, because it was my course that I had to be on.
That's really tough. What are you got out, you were exonerated, and that was through what is the name of that project?
Innocence Project. Yeah.
The Innocence Project, right. So talk to me about the Innocence Project. What is that all about? Like, is it just does it actually retry cases? Is it do you have to have new evidence? How does that work? I was
fortunate. Let me say also I was fortunate because I ended up with 4 lawyers, you know, the best. Okay. And one of those is Foley Ohag, Neil Austin. So it was separate from the Innocence Project. And this is, I'm there, you know, we talk about this sometime, and I always say that, you know, their first Black young boy client, because they're a pretty prestigious firm and they hadn't took on a case like this. But, you know, they were just perfect about what they saw happening in my life in the investigation. So they joined on with the Innocence Project. And, you know, my other attorney, Paul Rudolph and John Botta, they were through the Innocence Project. And Lisa Kavanaugh, who runs the project, was also my attorney at the retrial. So, you know, I winded up in good hands, but I had studied the law and learned my case. So after having been denied 4 times, and I wasn't supposed to even have another appeal by law, but I was on it, you know, just constantly. And I was determined that no one would do it any other way than the way I knew my case was. So it was the first time that I was like, I'm not leaving off of my points. And they were the attorneys who understood those points, saw what I was saying, and said, nah, you're right, we're going after this. And, you know, thank God.
Just out of curiosity, Darrell, on a percentage, I guess, what percentage of people do you feel are incarcerated right now today that are innocent?
You know, I've gotten this question before, and I don't do well with the idea of reporting it as to percentages. What I do is realize that in every prison across this country, if in the last 2 to 3 years, say 9 is out in Massachusetts, then I would say there's 9 more in every other prison somewhere. That's how I always lock it in, that there's 9 more, because this process has been in play. And a lot of times, you know, like the Innocence coming out now, and everybody understands the criminal justice system now, there are still brothers who've been in 45 years that are still getting overlooked because they're on the back side of that, right? So there are a lot of brothers and sisters that are in these prisons by the numbers, and doing a statistic on it is least as important to me as making an action about it, because I think that should be something we should be reviewing through the system and looking at cases that are suspicious cases or cases that really need to be relooked at and posted. Possibly
even, you know, I would recommend older cases first, right? To get these people that are on the back end reviewed first. They've been, I mean, you know, sometimes I feel like, am I just really smart, or is everyone else just really ridiculous? You know, because that just makes sense, right? That just is what makes sense. So why can't that be the thing that works? You know, why what works doesn't happen, get put into place? I never understood things like that.
I've been talking a lot, referring to people. What I tell people, if they want to look at this movement that's going on right now, if you want to look at the prison system and you want to look at slavery and come down the line and see our plight, I recommend they read the Willie Lynch letter, because it is the primary letter designed of a discussion of how they were going to control us and how they were going to do this. So we have the firsthand information. So I'm always telling people, you know, before you dive in my case or any case, or don't understand what this Black Lives, all these things that are going on, why don't you start with that Willie Lynch letter? Read that and then come back and let's start from there.
Where's that letter? Where is that letter? Is it in a book, or is it just...
It was an actual letter, so it's in a book, documentaries, but you just look it up, you know, and that is the scripted conversation and letter of how they were going to maintain the slave. And it was done, like, say, on a big open field, and it was, everybody could see it. So I'm always recommending that, because I understand our history a little differently, right? The same way I understand the idea of how we get out of these traps, because I learned it. And it's ironic that I'm saying that, because I was looking at something was said by Kanye the other day about Harriet Tubman. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I did.
And you see how ridiculous that is to say, well, he only brought them to other slaves. And this is one of the things about people not wanting to face reality, being so far away from reality, when we know that she led those out of slavery. You know what I mean? And so it's hard when you have other mouthpieces or other representation of color that is talking from something they heard.
That are misrepresenting, just period.
Misrepresenting.
So see, this is what I always say, right? It's all about organization, right? I don't feel like our biggest problem is unity. I feel like it's organization. And the reason why I think it's organization is because everybody wants to be in control of it. Everybody wants to be the one that is, oh, look at what Monet did. Look at what Darrell, everybody wants that notoriety, fame, right? That's the biggest disease. I talk to my son about it a lot. And I think that if we can, or I pray that, my goal, I hope, and this is the way that I proceed in my relationships as I develop them when I'm networking and with people like you and things. I look at, in what ways can I serve you? Like, what can I do to help, right? Like you have a lot of things going on. In what ways can I help? And vice versa. In what ways can you help me? And I feel like those collaborative contributions is what kind of starts to line up organization without talking about organization, right? It's kind of like, well, how can we be of service to each other? That's the organizing, because you know what you're doing. So you're giving me a directive. I know what I'm doing. I'm giving you a directive. That is the organization, people. That's all we need. You know what you're doing, and then have somebody come up and offer to serve.
Well, see, that's a different view, because it's, again, ironic that you would say that, because that has been the platform that I've been on, is trying to remind people that, when you look at the U.S. Olympics and we have track runners and everybody's in their lane, it does not matter how fast you run, if you're Usain Bolt. If you get even to the end of that line and step in someone else's lane, you're disqualified. Right. And I think our people sometimes have trouble taking advice and taking the knowledge from those that have lived in a particular lane. Right. I think we're so busy hearing about it and passing on the research that we stop presenting our solutions to people's problems based upon what we think we know, rather than being in their problem. You got to kind of be in the problem to get it. So
because our attitude has become to dominate, right? Or to be in charge rather than to work collaboratively. Like I said, it's like there is no collaboration if everybody wants to get the credit. You cannot collaborate on that. If your mind is, well, everybody better make sure that they know what I did. Like if that's your mind coming into a project, and I do events by profession. I'm completely collaborative. I have to be. I have to rely on my vendors. I have to trust that that their work ethic is where I want it to be, right? There's never a guarantee. I have to trust that, right? So that means I have to be in constant communication. I got to harass a little bit until I know for sure, okay, they're on it. I don't got to do this, right? But that is my role, to make sure that the event happens successfully. So like you said, and I think it's a great analogy, you already know your lane. I'm going to just make sure that it's not just tape on the ground. I'm gonna put little bumpers up so you ain't stepping on nothing else. Like I don't have time to straighten you out. I don't have time to recenter you. Like stay in your lane. This is what you got to do. Go do that. And the credit that is deserving for you is what's coming.
It's also about the baton that you're running with, because you're passing it on to somebody else and identifying what type of baton you're running on, right? And who you're passing it to. For me, I'll give you an example. So when I look at the race factor, I had an all-white jury. So what happened to me, that's why I said everything that could went wrong. So what happened to me as well was, in that all-white jury, before the trial even started, 3 of the white guys had said on the jury, he's black, basically, let's get out of here. So let's just, they hadn't even heard no evidence. So that was already against me.
Right.
And then come to find out, Miss Somebody, one of the jurors, this is 30 years later, she didn't want to die with what had happened. So she came forward as well and told us, and the court had to call her in, any of the jurors that was alive, to find out that this is what they were already against me for being black. So that didn't help as well. And she, she came out, she spoke on it, she did an interview about it. Sadly, she passed right when I came out, so we didn't get a chance to get together. But what I look at is saying that lots of things happen in life, lots of things go wrong. But her taking that action to me was saying, in your nature, you knew something was wrong. You just didn't have the strength to do anything about it. When people develop those strengths, although they change later or whenever, we have to be able to say, let's make use of that, right? Yeah. And let's try to encourage other people, right, to do the same thing. To come out and say, hey, we're going to tell our truths, white, black, whatever it is, to come out and tell our truths. And I think a lot of what's happening in the prison system and a lot of what's happening in our society, even the violence that is going on, is because a lot of people are not being allowed to tell their truths. So on their platforms, whether it's social media or whatever, they're putting up a percentage of who they are, but without someone to direct them into how to become who they are.
Right. Well, we've gotten really, I call it, crabs in a barrel. I feel like we've come really far down in the barrel, right? And I like to think of myself as outside the barrel, but I think that what happened is we started to diminish our own worth, for various reasons, whether, we didn't have parents who loved us or a man that treated us right, or we were abused, or and so we're dealing with all these things. And then we're dealing with a man coming into this situation, and he's dealing with his emotional stress and trauma. I was just talking about this earlier. Black men, one of the most difficult things I feel is for the majority, not everybody, is to for them to really overstand the Black woman's emotions around themselves and the men, right? It's just tough. It's hard because we want to feel safe and secure. We don't. We want all these things that we legit don't feel by right because you didn't allow us to feel it, right? So we're trying. So it's like this whole, are you going to be good? Well, are you going to be good? Well, if you're good, I'm good. Well, if you're good, I'm, and so it's kind of this whole like scenario of, are we going to trust each other enough, right? Or are we going to just go out here and be dismissive and violate and do all these other things that will be disrespectful on whatever level. And I think that one of the things, and we talked about this on the phone before, with prison, with emotions, I told you someone told me that my emotions give them a headache. I gotta laugh at it because I think I'm pretty like in control of my emotions, right? So to hear that, I said, wow, am I displaying them wrong, or there's just too many of them? Like, what is the actual problem?
I think it's 2 points that I make, right, to that. And, taking out the idea of men and women dealing with each other, coming out in these situations. Yeah. The first thing I would take on is that I catalog what we're going through as a people in this country coming out here. It's a fresh look for me. And what I realized is that people out here have become so busy making a living that they forgot how to live. Natural things that the Indians and our people survived to get through when they had no more than a piece of cornbread and cornmeal and, a piece of fat hog or whatever it was, to be slaves, to come out of that. We are, as this thing Meek Mills, these scars, when he talks about we rock so much ice to hide these scars, we are cosmetically made up to appear to be all right. And you understand, there's an appearance of being all right rather than dealing with the emotional effects of what's going on. So I just wanted to make that point that and I think that that's absolutely right. A lot of that has to do with us being invalidated by our feelings, both men and women. For years, decades even, our parents were invalidated, their parents were invalidated, and it goes on and it goes on and on. And so I think that this is a really good time in the world, is what I mean, because I feel like people are starting to identify. I think that a lot more people are starting to talk about the real disparities that exist and how long they've existed. I was watching this one video, this brother was talking about the Roman Catholic Church. He was actually not even a brother, he was a white guy. He was talking about the Roman Catholic churches and how they were basically the beginning of every abduction, every rape, every pillage, every like overtaking,
And it was interesting when he was talking about it, he was talking about like Brazil and how Haiti got overtaken by France, and then France like put this heavy debt on them to pay back so they wouldn't get invaded again, which is why Haiti's so poor. Super interesting to me. I didn't know all of this stuff, but and I think I'm getting a little bit off track. I apologize for that. But one of the things that I wanted to, one of the points that I wanted to make is you've gone through all of these struggles, Darrell, all of these trials, all of these things. You seem so calm. You seem so at peace. Have you always been this way? Like, has it always been mellow? Or do you feel like, okay, now I'm home, so I have a different perspective, a different angle to work this? And what part of your case are you still working out? Because you have a great job now, right? You have a great opportunity. Okay. Let's talk about where you're working now and how everything is moving forward.
Well, in terms of work, right? And then I'll come back to the other thing I wanted to conclude.
Okay.
The relationship part you were talking about coming out here. But yeah, I worked for the mayor, of Boston, and I became a special advisor and consultant to him on public safety. And so my thing was doing what I really did while I was away, trying to talk to the brothers out here that, like I said, my motto is making a way out of no way, that things are possible if you put yourself in a possibility category, right? And it's not just, possibilities are not just about being positive, you know what I mean? Because we can plug in, this Keurig over here, and it has a positive and negative. There's a reason it has a positive and negative. If you just had one plug, it's still not coming in, although that's the positive side. It has both. But I think it's application of applying who we are versus who someone else says we are as a people, right?
Right.
In the prison situation. So let's use this example. You were talking about like the relationships coming out. I've been constantly saying that you have to prepare somebody, although in prison it's quick visits and letters. And it's a lot to come out and live with someone else when you've been gone away so long yourself, right? And so now you got brothers that are just coming home, sisters probably been with other brothers, those things come up, people moved on, sometimes you didn't stay in a relationship, brothers expect too much for 10 years, still be waiting, or 20 years, and you come immediately home. Now you're living with another person. And especially during this time, like COVID, you're so used to being told what to do all the time that you may mistake someone telling you, your lady or whatever it is, you may mistake what they're trying to do because you're looking at like someone's telling you what to do. And then you're looking at always the feeling of being boxed in, you know what I mean? And that just comes from how is it human nature to be away from your significant other? When you start with saying God made Adam and Eve, and next thing you know, you're around thousands of Adams for years and years and years. You're coming out and you're trying to establish this trust with another human being, right? And my thing has been there should be programs. That is something we should start inside. That is something that when you bring in a brother's home and he's coming home maybe with a woman who has a child that's not his child, all those things should be training and things we work with inside by bringing the sisters in, and at least the last few months, and allowing them longer business time to work it out, how they're going to live together, what they're going to do, because you can't just drop this trauma into another family's life and expect them to expect it.
Or for it to be successful. And I think that's the point that I was making before, because I feel like it was the point that women, we do have to, if we're going to date somebody that's been incarcerated, there is a lot of patience needed, and there's a lot of communication practice, right? Practice communicating, because like you said, so, and in prison, everything it's more aggressive. It's all testosterone. It's more like pecking order. That's not out in the world. It is, but on a far less, in your face scale, right? It's not in your face.
In the world, you most people, although it happens in a neighborhood, may see a trauma or a shooting or whatever happens, every other day or right now, every once a week or whatever, and they've seen it by news, they've seen it by things they heard, police driving by. But when you live in an environment that I'm in, you're waking up every day on point because somebody's getting stabbed, hurt every day. So every day you're conscious of that environment from hour out to hour in. You know what I mean? You're never lax. If you know anything about prison, you're never lax. So when you've been living your life as long as I have, constantly paying attention to every single detail. And our guidelines are different. People may treat people a certain way out here. It's real weird in a way that you go to prison, and prison, the place that's supposed to be the worst of the worst, actually has more order than out here. Because otherwise we'd have homicides every day. It's because we know you don't talk to a brother this way, you don't touch nobody's stuff, you stay in line. And those are the things about prison that people miss about some great leaders that are in prison that could actually help facilitate a lot of things in the world, because it takes something to manage that. The guards are not managing that.
Right.
It always come when you have somebody mediating in between a riot that's going to break out. The guards are not handling that. Someone's mediating that. White, black, Spanish, whatever it is, right? Latino. And you learn that process. And I've been in that process of mediating a lot of them. And when you're in that environment, you have to learn to accept what's going on and then find your place of what little dent and change you want to make, who you're going to be. So that was the only way I saw doing it. You know what I mean? Trying to reach the brothers that were going home. And I had some success with that, and I keep up with them now. And brothers call me all the time, from the prison. But more importantly, we have to define the now. So I always lived on the now, like in this moment. That's why I don't like planning things like, well, we're going to go on a family vacation in October. I learned this in prison. Now you guys see, those plans that you might make in October may not be no October. You know what I mean? So my thing is like, I'll just say, what is it in life I want to do? And then when availability is there to do it, I do it. And that is something that the kids in the community don't have access to, because they haven't learned to apply that, right? They haven't learned to apply those real choices. Like I can do something different because they can't. If they're on Bowden Street or they're down, Blue Ave or wherever they're at, Dudley, and they're hanging, that's the life they know. The other option is I'm a pump, I'm gonna sell drugs, I'm gonna rob somebody, or I'm just gonna try to steal something, or I'm getting my money. However I'm getting it. Yeah. The idea first is always getting to the money, when actually, as a people, we're spiritually bankrupt right now. And the idea would probably be getting to the love and adding a little finance to that,
all we need is love, man. I say it all the time. And the finances, I think, it's not, I think that love even surpasses that. I think that is, that is the common denominator for success, or to be able to live, like the point that you made earlier. We've been taught to survive. We've learned that. And in prison, I'm sure you've been taught to survive on a way different level. But this is all we're doing out here right now, is surviving, if we are not conscious enough to understand that we have the capacity to live. It's something that I believe that we have to find within ourselves. It's a certain joy, it's a certain peace, it's a certain balance, that has to be located within us to say, I don't have to be involved in this and I don't have to be involved in that to be happy or to be good or to be satisfied. I can maintain in my space in life, in my circle in life. And I say that to myself too, because I remember when I was younger, I'm a creative. I could never settle. I wanted to do everything. I didn't want to settle, and so now where I've learned focus and I've learned discipline, I've also learned greatness. And so I encourage people, focus on one thing, because it's what equates to greatness, is the focus, right? The capacity to be able to manage different things. People feel like that's great. That's what I thought was great when I was younger. Like, I can do this, I can do that. I'm talented in this and I'm talented in that, but I did nothing great. It was good. And I got by, but now I see the difference in like, okay, wow, I'm doing great things. And I actually have a skill set that is valuable, that people want to pay for, that no one else has, and that's a great thing to be able to have that. When you have an opportunity to now come home and you're working with the mayor and you're making changes, you talked about, one of the things that you feel like should happen in terms of initiatives in prison with these guys getting training on how to come home and be in a family environment. This is one of the things that I want to talk about, dive into a little bit, because these programs, these initiatives, these reforms, this is where I feel you, Darrell, and others like you that are in similar circumstances, or brothers that came home and are doing something positive in the community. I do believe that the input primarily, if not solely, should come from you. you understand the needs, you understand the level of support, you understand the crisis mentality coming home, you understand, I think that people kind of take it for granted, like, oh, you're home, you should be happy and it should be good, right? And it's like, well, do you know I was in there for 32 years? Do you know what my life looked like for 30? Like, I think that people kind of, well, be happy now. Like, I think that they forget, like, wow, you had a whole experience, that brought you to this right here. And that experience legit is what shapes you as a man who you are today. So all of that matters, and I think that this is, again, like what you said I think that white folks, they forget to care about that level of it, the depth of that, so with the whole Black Lives Matter, and they say, oh, well, all lives matter. I think that they forget to care. It's like, well, if we didn't have to say it, we wouldn't. If it was fair, we wouldn't. And now I'm hearing this whole, I think it's kind of funny where I've heard it twice now, where a couple of brothers and sisters are saying, like, be happy that we're looking for equitable value or equality and not like revenge. Like, be happy that the things, and I feel like
those things are very troubling topics to me, because I think we fail in leadership. When you have a leader is at the forefront. I think if you came back to our community and honestly said, who is your leader? Like, the Martians would come down and say, take us to your leader. Where would we be taking them? Just, that was hypothetical right now. They said, take us to your leader. Who will we identify as our leader? We always identify the leaders that we lost.
That's right.
But under the umbrella of leadership, we have not identified or been happy with that, right?
Right.
I think there are people out here in place. They know, whether it's me, a sister that done the time, or people that have lived it and come back out to try to do the right thing. They know that the solution is in us and with us because we've lived it, right?
Right.
You wouldn't, what would be the point of having the Navy SEALs if they weren't trained and they weren't the ones that went in that special position to do that special job? Right. It's just how the military prepares them. They're not going to take even the best soldier and just be like, you're automatically in because you can shoot, you can dive. No, you're going through the special training. And what I'm saying here is that they know, but I think, sadly, so many people have been doing the same things the same way for so long and getting money for it that they're not trying to give up their positions at all. And they're not trying to be, I want to make sure I put this. They're not trying to remove their limelight. Because I've been in a situation to challenge many since I've been home, just to simple debates, and I speak at Harvard, BC, all of these schools. But I've been trying to set up, I want to challenge these leaders to have a debate. Let's debate it with me. If you're going to talk criminal justice, let's debate it. And I realize they stay away from that because reality is you really don't know what you're talking about. You got all the statistics of things that I saw. So you got statistics of the fighting and people that didn't get out and how parole gets lost. And you got all these statistics. You've never met the individuals. You never dealt with the individuals. You never saw them every day, how they process things, how they grow up. And it's lost on people that the same way you grow up out here, some child you may have put away at 17 that may have done a shooting and didn't understand it. He's in his late 40s now. He understands it today. He grasped it, right? And yet still we say, but you killed someone. Well, this is what I put back to our people. And I want you to consider this. And I know our overall topic is, talking about what happened in my case. But what happened in my case is a giant view of what's happening everywhere. It's just a part of my life, but it's the same thing, right? So if we look at all of the brothers and sisters that are incarcerated, and we look at all of the people that are behind the policies of how to maintain these incarcerations, we'll also remember that the people that are watching over us in prison, especially in Massachusetts, if they got a GED, they can get that job. So I've been in prison with the father, the son, and now the grandson just starting as a family conditioned to work at a particular prison. Like there were guards that you would know, this and that family. You look it up, the whole family worked there since I was a kid, right? We're not understanding that we have set it up for other people to be employed off our backs. We have free slaved ourselves, right? And we haven't looked at why we've done that, right? And we can we can base it upon race and everything, but I wanted to make sure I was clear about this point of the statute of limitations, right? If that is how it's felt, that the person that is incarcerated can't redeem themselves even with a punishment, then I go back and say, then why aren't we as a people taking every picture of every lynching we have, and when we see all these people standing there with slaves, or in recently, it's standing there with people hanging and burning, I'm saying,
holding their rifles and smiling. Mm-hmm.
Limitations on murder.
That's right.
And why aren't we charging those people in those pictures?
That's right.
You
can clearly see them.
They may have never changed. So seeing their pictures up there tell me, you go after the guy with the Holocaust, you'll go find this guy that did something at the Holocaust, and he's 90 years old, but they found him and they bringing him in, bring him in trial. And I'm going, well, if we're going to go that, let's just look at these pictures right here. And I'm saying
down south,
the 60s, and let's just find these people. And I want to see these charges go forth here.
That's right.
These are the immediate actions we should be taking to be able to say, now you see how it applies. Now you would be saying, I'm not like that anymore. I was there, but I didn't do it. I changed. No, you supported the action.
That's
so
right.
Understand that some of the things in our environment have supported the actions of our children doing certain things, and give them the benefit of that. Because we don't really have a children's problem out here. We don't have a children's problem. We have an adult problem. It is adults' positions to make the way for their child. Right now, the future that we are about to hand our children is not looking too good. And this is not the future that they deserve. It is an adult situation we're in. And I don't think a lot of our quote unquote leadership and people that are behind some of the movements have thought about the adult actions necessary to make that movement work. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. I agree that there is not a lot of a strong singular presence of anyone living in leadership. But I also feel that, so our generation, I'm a little bit younger than you, but I feel like the generation under me and these millennials now, I think that a leader is going to spawn from them. I do believe that. I see their spirit of activism. I see how they're out in these streets. I see it's different. The generation is different. And I applaud them. I'm very proud.
I wanted to comment back. I always take this comment. So let me just do this real clear.
All right.
It's impossible for you, and probably if you have children or be younger than I am, because in reality, there is no place in this world where your life would get paused other than prison or death. And in death, we say you graduate into heaven or wherever you're going. So that's still travel. When you
don't think like an 18-year-old man. I hope that's not the point you're about to make.
No. It is okay. It is not about my thinking like an 18-year-old man. What it's about is me recognizing that I still own the idea of my own youth. And so that thing that you were just grabbing from what I'm saying is not me acting 18 years old, right? It can be mature. It's me developing and understanding who I am, and then saying I can package that into the youth that I deserve that they tried to take away. So if aging is just about what our bodies do in our lives, then we're all old, because everybody's losing thousand cells a day that die. Every moment while we're talking, we're losing life cells right now instantly. So I process it and say, no, I start off the same way a 5-year-old starts off, because I enjoy life. It makes me enjoy life. A 5-year-old, he's not thinking race. He's not thinking none of that. He's just thinking, this is new, that's new, this is new. So when I came home, phones is new, this Zoom thing is new, everything's new. I take it in. So I am living that life in terms of youth with some happiness in it. So that's why I was saying, I don't. No,
that's great though. I think that attitude is awesome actually, because it's like you said, and you said it perfectly. It's not a matter of maturity. It's just you have recognized where you're at and you are okay to be reliving that. And that takes, a lot of courage and a lot of self-worth. It's if I was your mom, I'd be proud. I'm proud anyway, but I feel, I didn't know how to I don't know how to say it, but that's good. I think that's amazing that you can identify that. And I think that it's a positive lesson and a good lesson for all these brothers that are coming home that struggle with being able to identify that. I think that is probably one of the challenges is just being vulnerable, allowing yourself to say, you know what, I'm right here. You know, I'm not here, I'm here, but I can see all of this and I can take it in and I can embrace it and I can learn it and I can take my time and be in my process with it. And I think that sometimes it gets, you know, there's a force or there's too much pressure that gets put on a man because it's like, well, I want you to hurry up and be this. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you know? And so I do think that, you know, it's compromise on both sides when it comes to that relationships aspect of it, but, you know, that you can identify where you're really at and who you really are at this point. And it sounds like you've been doing that since even before you went in. It's amazing. You know, it's a great thing to have a strong mind, especially when you are isolated, you know.
Well,
it's a blessing.
you know, the thing unique for me is that sadly, this is my only incarceration. It'd be different if I locked up for a pistol here and this there, and you had this was a total, you know, shocker for me, right? But I'm looking at the other end of it and I'm going, no, look at how you prepare this meal that we're serving the community when it comes to those coming home, women or men, right? If you, I don't know if you're a great cook or you know what you do, but I got a sense enough to know, watching my grandmother and them cook, that she's not going to put the oven on 375 or whatever it goes on and cook a cake and a roast and another pie all at the same time in the same stove, because the roast is obviously going to need way more time, right? And, you know, and base her a turkey and do it all in one oven, because the time is going to treat each one of those things that we intend to eat differently, right? One's going to be underprepared, overprepared, right? And that is the same thing about prison. They know when they throw us all in there, you take a kid, like when I came in with Natural Life, okay, and it's for a murder charge. Then you take a kid who stole some candy bars and he got 2 years to do. Yet and still, you take everybody and throw them in the same blocks together. So you will put guys, you know, who only have 5 years to do in a block with a serial killer, mass murderer, you know, the worst of the worst. We're all living in the same environment. And then you're saying this meal is going to come out just perfectly when we're done. Impossible. Because you're not, you know, I always thought, I think when I would say this in prison, guys would look at it like, man, if they did it that way, you would take away from us incoming people. Because prison functioned by new people coming in, new information, new deals, things like that. So guys thought it was odd, but my view was, if that guy's got 5 years and that's all he got to do, he don't need to be around none of the rest of the guys. He needs to be in a unit with other guys who got 5 years so that they can process that they're going home in 5 years instead of living under the turmoil of, I might get killed tomorrow because this dude here ain't going home. It changes every part of your being when you have to deal with someone else that's not even practicing the idea of going home. So your neighbor's a guy who's in there for 4 bodies and he don't care inside, he didn't care outside. And then you're like, I'm going to a program. He can change your whole day. Right. You don't care nothing about your program and what you're doing. So he can change your whole day. He can turn around and be like, well, listen, man, I don't want to hear none of that. You know, blah, blah, blah. And so you don't have that to bounce off. Then when you have a bunch of those in the same unit, and you're thinking about, it's like me. I'm not in there with a flag saying I'm innocent because the rest of the guys are going, that don't matter. Nobody cares about that. You know, like if they know and the hood knows and it's the word, dudes be like, he didn't really do that. But when you're in that situation, you're all in. You have joined the corrupt military that you're all in, the Department of Corruption. That's why I don't call it corrections. There's nothing correcting about it. It's the Department of Corruption. In that corruption, there's illegal guards, you know, and I call them illegal guards because they're connoisseurs of providing us the wrong thing. They're participants in seeing these fights happen in these beefs, and because it brings them money for overtime. There's so many tactics that people don't know to look for. And they don't want to bring anybody in that does know because they think that stops their shine. That thinks that, you know, I went to this school, graduated, became a lawyer, you know, became a politician, and I'm on a platform that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to take this guy over here who just got out of jail and let him get on the platform with me and make me look foolish, so they avoid it. And my thing is, we've got to stop letting them avoid it. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. If I do a Zoom, I would love it to be the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Let's get chief of police on here. Let's get the DOC corrector on here. And let's let our people hear from every side. No get around. Let's go right into it. And that doesn't happen.
Let me ask this, to what resolve? If we all went through it and everybody miraculously told the truth, which, you know, what is the resolve? To change, to create new policy, to redesign the way the prison system runs? Like, what is the goal? All these things that y'all, and I support it. I just want you to know, like, I'm just curious.
It's been redesigned since the 1927s. It's been over and over. It's the same gimmick. The policies, cool, we write them up. We wouldn't have to create more policies when we have enough policies in place to supposedly give us justice.
Okay.
We are listening to people that are saying, we got to get it in policy, we got to pass this bill. So you
think it's more implementation and execution? You think the stuff is
implementation and execution of the narrative, right? Okay. Three kind of people in the world: those that watch it happen, let it happen, and make it happen. Yep. The watch it happen people, as I'm always saying, the watch it happen people can always tell you about somebody else's life. The let it happen people can always tell you what happened to them. The make it happen people realize it's got to be done now. That's right. We are not in a position to be doing things at a time period anymore. We're in a position right now to be able to say we're requiring something, we're requesting something, and then fine-tuning what that request is. We've just had a whole bunch of marches day for day for day, and we're finally seeing, other than over here, what is it, Oregon, Portland, where we're finally seeing those marches slow down. People have time. There was no way you're going to march every day, especially when that sun came out and gave you the opportunity to hit that beach and do something else. People forgot what they were walking, right? The idea was to go into that and come out with something. You know what I mean? It's almost like 50 Cent said, being a window shopper. We're a window shopper in the idea of this is what we should have done. No. Go in. Go in.
Right. That's right.
This is what we're taking out. And we're not doing that. So without us being a group of make it happen people, we're going to be in the same situation. And ironically, you guys are incarcerated. It's like, I know prison. I don't know anything else. I know prison. And I know that this is a second form of prison. The only thing different is you have more space to move around, right? But the lack of income, the support, the being able to go where you want, do what you want, when you want, how you want. No, you're sitting back now every day waiting on a mayor, a governor to tell you for the first time in your life, you won't be going out. Your store will be closed. No, you will not be seeing a movie. No, your beach will be closed. Well, that has never happened to this world out here in terms of these last generations we've lived. We didn't even expect that to be coming. Well, that's what happened in prison. You can't go out. You won't be doing this. You won't be doing that. So until we understand that and identify the invisible fence around this world, you will never know the situation you're in because you don't have enough things to relate to what incarceration really is. Incarceration is not a place. It wasn't the place that bothered me. It was a building, right? So I had to be in it. I expected that. I was locked up, so I expected to continue to be in that cell. What I did not expect was the radical idea of every human being for himself, unless you're in a group, unless you're in a gang, and the guards is another gang. I did not understand that form of living, like the idea that, no, we're just human beings. That's not the philosophy. Right, we're just human beings. The philosophy is this is how they judge us. This is what I'm doing. I don't care. That bothered me most than the idea of the concrete. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was watching our culture fall apart. And then when you can identify why, when you can see another young boy and be like, wow, he's in jail with his father and the father's grandson. You know, and that's what I was running into. Fathers and sons, uncles and uncles. It's an entire family. It's not one guy. Most guys, that's why they don't care anymore about going to prison. You see the young guys today, they don't care because in their world, all of their friends and the people they're closest to are in there. My homies in there, my uncles in there, my brothers in there, so I'm safe. I go in there with my people. That tells you that they want camaraderie and that their whole idea for them in life was to have a people. You understand that? And we didn't provide them a people, so we allowed people that were gang leaders or whatever to provide them something that we didn't. And that's why I'm saying society has to start with that first. Where did we fail? And why, if we're so angry, like the violence in Boston right now, the killing the kids, if we're so angry, why can't we figure out how this 16-year-old today is leading a group of guys, right? It's telling them who to shoot, what to do, where to go, how we're going to do it, and pull off these homicides and get away with FBI's and police and everybody's tracking them and witnesses and still get away. That is a good mind. It's just the application is in the wrong place. And we're not identifying these guys. We're not coming to the street saying, if that 17-year-old can lead all these guys, let's get him in a room and find out how we can revert that talent to something else, because he's obviously doing it. Don't look down upon it and say, he's gangs. No, there's a gang leader. And that means that if he's able to pull that off, he's able to pull off some greater things to encourage them to go towards. But what have we laid out for them to have? You understand?
No, I absolutely do.
It's still a guy or a woman in prison still calling the shots out here in the real world. People can act like that ain't happening, but that's going.
No, I'm sure that that's what's happening. So what I am challenged with in my own mind right now, because you said that, you know, I talked about, I feel like the younger generation, you said that, you know, the parents are responsible to lead the way, which I agree with. My struggle, or where I'm having difficulty trying to like connect it, is, you know, you have these parents that have already produced children to think away, be away, feel away, see the world away. And so if we start with those parents, then how are we starting with them? Is it more training? Is it more education? If that's the case. So I always, and this is, you know, you're from Boston, so, you know, I always struggle with Boston being, like, Boston is like it's an anomaly, right? Because we're cool, we're not close. You know, I go to other cities like Chicago, we're one of the most violent cities, right? But in the summertime, Chicago is a big family. Well, everybody hanging together.
Well, you know, that's where I'm originally from, Chicago, right?
Well, we talked about it, right? The South Side. We talked about it a little bit.
Okay,
but, you know, but there's a sense of community even amongst the violence and the crime. Boston, right. That's something that I don't know what that is, right? Because I felt that sense, Philadelphia, Jersey, I felt that in other places. Here, even if I go to community events, I don't feel that same sense. And I that's what I don't understand about here. Like, what is that? You know,
when we look at Boston and you go, this may be the haters' capital in some ways, because no, I identify it by this. Go look at artists that have come, even when this kid Pop Smoke just got killed. Yeah. You didn't really recognize that he was from Boston or anything until kind of like after the fact, unless you knew him, right? If you go look at most artists that were ever from Boston, they went somewhere else and got on.
That's right.
Right? So you have to understand, why doesn't the launch pad work here? Why doesn't anybody take off here? And everybody will say, the hate, you see it every day. The hate is so much. And if somebody starts rising, we'll say, man, the hate, you just can't get the support.
Yeah.
I started identifying that in terms of Boston itself. And what I realized is that more pain, more problems. And we have to go back to our history and look at our busing situation. Look at the history of Christmas addicts taking the first shot. Lots of things have occurred here in Massachusetts that symbolically are over our head and naturally in our system. So it's like a child growing up under a battered father, right? Your shock system is different. When you hear someone yelling, when you hear someone saying something, it's a tremble in you that's different because of all this prior abuse.
Well, no tremble at all.
You understand? Right. So in Boston, I think that it's one of those things where no one has actually come out and said, okay, we're haters' capital. Now let's separate the haters from the ones that really want to do something. We don't identify. So kind of over here, it's like sporadically everyone's all over the place. Even the marches, even the things that are going, even the flams of people being in position, have been in position selling the same thing, right? If you wouldn't go for that, if you brought home a television from one of the places that you shopped and it worked for a while and it had a 2-year warranty, but within that first year it started blurring and doing all that, you're taking that TV and you want your warranty on it. We're forgetting that we have people that are in place that are responsible to reply to us. And we're not going back saying, well, we got a warranty under the Massachusetts Constitution to have these things, and I'm cashing that in. We have more talk about it. And all we have to do really in Boston is pay attention to the leadership and see how many programs they have and how many of them are separated because everyone wants to do it themselves. That's a real thing up here. Yeah. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to, it's deeper than the crab in the bucket, because in this bucket right here, you got crabs that are trying to put the top on. Now, I don't mind a crab crawling up on me, trying to pull me down. The bucket needs another chance for me to get out. I'm worried about this crab that's actually out there trying to put the top back on the bucket so we can make our way to legal so they can fry us up. And that's how I see it. You know what I'm saying? I see that going on.
You can't even get out the barrel ever.
I'm worried about that. You know what I mean? That crab. And that crab exists. I'm looking for him.
Yeah, no, he exists. He's a plenty out here. So, you know, and I love my city. You know, I love Boston. I think it's a great city. But I do think that there is a real big deficit in the way that we work with each other. And I know tons, you know, I know a lot of people in this city, or at least I'm familiar with a lot of people familiar with me, that are doing great things. Great things. I think that's one of the reasons why the podcast for me was a calling for me. It was just the right direction, because I've always been a collaborative person, and I wanted to be effective. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted it to, you know, my conversations to matter, not just to me, to my people, right? I wanted people to be inspired and motivated by them. And I think that you, Darrell, have done a great job at doing that for the audience today. I'm super grateful. What is next for you now? Like, I know you said you're still working on things with your case. What is going on at this point today?
Well, my case is over. I'm exonerated. You know what I mean?
Okay, exoneration is done. Okay.
I'm innocent. I was found innocent, yep. So my case is over. But every day of that case, I'm living it. You know what I mean? It doesn't go away. It's no different if you burn your finger and you're cooking, you wrap it up and you wait for it to heal, and there's a process. There's a whole bunch of things for me to heal. That's a process for me, and they don't change. I mean, that's the thing that troubles me, is that people would naturally most assume, like, you got to get paid for that. So the money, that might make up your life, but I know more about living and making a living. You know what I mean? So I understand the difference. But for me, there's all kinds of trauma, pain, misuse, abuse, you know what I mean? Racism on levels you couldn't even imagine. But I always approach out here with the idea that my life is only made to go forward. So you would not get in the car and drive forward looking at the rearview mirror. The rearview mirror is only to tell you what's behind you, maybe pulling out, but you're not going to drive forward in life doing that. So I don't have time to keep looking at the past for the example of trying to go forward. It was only made for me to pull out, assess where I'm at, what's coming behind me, and then say, take what I need to the future. And that's just what we got to do. I can't focus on where I've been. I'm too busy focusing on who I have to be, right? For myself, primarily, you know what I mean? And, you know, it's, a young lady said to me, right? And I always want to get what I'm learning, you know what I mean, as well, and give that back. But a young lady said to me, her name is Stephanie, and she said to me that you have to make decisions, right, based upon changing little things. It may be putting this down. You know, I mean, come to your home, and in prison, I'm just putting that down. You know what I mean? It's a cell. I'm putting it down. Here in someone else's home, it may be, that doesn't go there. Everything in its place, everything in its order. It helped me understand, and the reason I was saying it was quotational what she said, because she was just trying to get across that in order for you to be happy, you're going to have to know things that have a place and things you can take their place. Yeah. You know, really think about that. Things that already have a place, you can go move them around, but they're not in their place, and someone would identify like that's not where that's supposed to be. The kitchen table is not supposed to be in the living room, right? You know, but being able to make a place and have your own idea of what you're designing, it's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Because you can bring guests to the table, right? You can say, this is how I want this laid out. It was just a great lesson And I don't really explain it the way I learned it, you know what I mean? But I learned the things about a responsibility in the world versus the responsibility to myself and what I want to change. They're entirely different. So I practice and I intend to stay on my lane because it was too much time in that place that was second to college for me to give up what I learned and lived to go and be in somebody else's place.
Right.
I own the spot that I'm standing on. You know, I survived it. I lived it. I own this spot. So I don't change the dialogue. I don't fine tune it. I present it as it is, the common thing that we all afraid of. What's the matter with your truths? You know what I mean? Like being out here with sisters, it's complicated for me because I don't have time to do what the other brother does. I don't have time to lay down a whole format of following the script, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to say this. It's so easy practice. Then I'm going to get better at that. You're going to say, act this way. Then I'm going to learn that and get better at that to accomplish whatever the short-term goal. My thing is, like, I'm going to tell you who I like, how I like it, what I want. And then I'm going to do all that without singing the national anthem. And that's me. And this is you start from that, right? So I'm using that example to say that those things are even difficult. Human nature were difficult. And then you get with somebody and you learn these things, you know what I mean? And so it's not an easy practice coming back into this life from the dead. Right? And we're talking about people are always, you know, they're searching Mars and everything, looking for an alien. And I say all the time, I'm a damn alien. Where else in the world can you disappear and pop back up? It doesn't happen. No one's ever been promised to pop back up until we see Jesus. And I got back before he did. So, you know, now you assume Jesus understands the humor, right? My God understands my humor. And I'm just saying, I got back before Jesus. So I'm fortunate to have gotten back. You know what I mean? And so it's what we do with the time we have now. But it's also about connection, right? And connecting with the people who want to do. I have no interest in connecting with a bunch of talkers because I realized coming home, I can go on YouTube and probably find every single subject to do, how to do. And if I click on this YouTube, what I'm not going to find is how to do this damn 32 years. And somebody on there saying, this is how you do it. Or a guy might be on there telling you how to go about it, but he's never going to be able to tell you how to do it.
How to survive it.
Because this catalog in there is deep on what can go wrong every day, all day.
Yeah, I really love that you are more actionable. I think that that's the position that I stand on. You know, I actually get really frustrated by people talking a whole lot. You know, it's like, well, what is the plan? You know, I even said it to you earlier, like, what is the end goal? Like, what do we need to do, right? Like, I like to focus on that. You know, it helps me to want to be involved. You know, like, what is the goal? Like, what's the mission?
What is the truth? Right? What is the truth? You know when they say
the truth? That's right. That's right.
Okay, but what is the truth? So when do we actually tell our truths? Like when we deal with this race thing. Okay, so yesterday, Chicago, look at the funeral shooting, right? 14-something people. And I'm like, I just left from home. You know what I mean? And you think about it and you go, somebody on the other side, you know, white particularly, you know, a racist would have all ammunition. Look at them. Look at what they do. We don't have to kill them. They're going to kill each other, right?
Yeah.
You know, these things are things that we've left out here for the world to see without us saying, we don't got to explain that. Don't worry about what black people are doing. Just follow what we want.
Right.
That's not going to happen, right? And we're not mindful of real serious things because in prison, that's how they would work. The guards mount up to do illegal things. So I don't understand the whole, you know, going at all the police because... And I'm the one that was put away by police, right? But the reason I don't understand it because I understand their tactic. If you get rid of Detective Brown, Detective Green, Captain Fleming, and they are all gone, and that's been their career, but now they're gone for these reasons, like all the ones who resigned in one whop because they didn't want to follow what was being set up. Where do you think they went? These are people sitting around with our information, my sister, that can tell you who your uncle was, your grandfather, who was arrested, they have all your information. Now, these are people that were running these things, right? What do you think they're doing with it? Wouldn't they would just go right to a racist organization to be able to say, I got access to guns, I know the law, I know how to work, I know how to get away with it, I know how to infiltrate them. We are actually allowing some people to mount up that we're not paying attention to.
Right.
And then we talk about, yeah, we can get explosive, right? I would send a message back saying, no, we could get violent. But can we get explosive, right? If they would drop something on Hiroshima today with Trump, if you think if all black people went out and was like, we're just going for broke, yeah, they didn't drop something on us too. Be mindful of what we're dealing with, right? Especially when someone's trying to recapture you. The same way in slavery, you got the free slave and he's free slave, then they come up with the statute to be able to say, I'll put you back in slavery. Okay, we internally say we will die before we go back in slavery, but that spiritual slavery that they keep us in is to our detriment because we're not going to treat each other right until we feel better about who we are.
That's right, individually.
It's our job to deliver our children to feel better about who they are. You know what I mean? And some adults need to feel better about who they are or who they could become.
That's right.
And so it's troubling to me. It's actually scary for everybody out here because they're not paying attention to what the other person is thinking.
Yeah, well, it's mindfulness, and this is one of the things that I teach when I do my coaching sessions and stuff is mindfulness. You have to, the Bible tells us to pay constant attention to ourselves, like make it our business to pay constant attention to yourself, and I think that people, we're so focused on what everyone else is doing, the imagery out here, like the fascination, and that looks so good and that's so great, and look at the bling and look at the shine, that we forget, like, we're a human, we're an individual on the planet, we're all connected. I think that people, either they don't know or they don't remember, so like, that's why I said it's mindfulness. I was talking to my son, his birthday was yesterday, he just turned 13, him and his friend, I brought him on a little trip, and we were talking about how everybody, because these kids, they're preteens, right? So they're going to start going through like the insecurities that teenagers go through and things like that. And so I was talking to them about the fact that every human on the planet feels it, insecure. I was telling them, I said, when you start feeling insecure, especially if it's a girl you like and you feel nervous and, they're boys, they're young kids. So I said, that's when you have to know, you know what? I can feel a little bit more confident because something's wrong with her too. And she knows it. Like, even though I don't know it, she knows it. I said, and you can walk out on that, and this is where my confidence comes from. I walk out and I say, whatever my struggles are, whatever my problems are, whatever my turmoil is, I'm not in this by myself. Like, and I know it, and that's not to say that, oh, good for someone else. It's just a fact. Like, I just know I'm not alone in whatever struggle I'm just not by myself ever. Whatever the struggle is, someone else is going through it, or they have gone through it. And so that is the conditioning that I give myself to help me to actually accomplish it, right? To make me not scared, to say, even when I was giving birth, right? Millions of women do this all the time. Like, you have to tell yourself, right? Like, I can do it, because fear gets in the way sometimes. And you tell yourself, I don't think I'm going to be capable. And it's like, of course you can give birth. Of course you can do it. Like, don't ever, but this is what you go through, right? And so it's the same thing. It's like this consciousness about ourselves. So this awareness about ourselves. And then the other problem too, Darrell, is identifying that whatever it is that you are aware about yourself may be, like you said before, some of those targeted ignorances that we were raised to believe in the hood were true, or, like, it could be wrong, so there's a whole process of not just learning ourselves, but we also have to unlearn some of the negative things that were instilled in us growing up. That same guy that I was telling you that was giving that little speech, that white guy, he was talking about, he said, white people will never admit it. He said, but we were all taught the same thing. He was a white guy. He was like, we'll never admit it. He said, but every single family, he was like, whether it was subtle, overt, covert, like however it was explained, we were taught in our households, do not regard Black people. Like, so what if their life is this? So, like, he's like, I was taught that. Not to hate them, but so what? Like, that's them. Like, we can't care. Like, and he said, until we start caring as human beings on the planet, like, just understanding that it's just wrong. And it's to your point with the lynchings that people would proudly pose in front of. I've been saying that for years, man. Like, how are you smiling? Like, is the dude in jail? I've seen maybe 3 or 4 different images that I can say in my mind. I remember these guys, the hiked up pants, the rifles in their hand, the hats, like just looking like they just spit out tar. Like, it's just a whole image that I can see in my mind. I'm like, well, what happens to them? Why do they get to post these pictures? Like, it's cool, And so there's this whole idea that we have of ourselves based on the media's portrayal of us, objectifying us in certain ways and things like that, that I think that unfortunately, especially those with minds that are not as strong, we start to believe it. We start to believe that we are these things that the media portrays us as, or that we are these things that the white world sees us as. And so they start talking about it, and they start criminalizing it. And guess what? The weaker mind, we start agreeing with it. Oh yeah, he is that. And now we're looking at our own people, our own brothers, our own sisters, and we're looking down on them. And, oh, that dude over there, or that nigga over there, he's about this and he's about that. When you have the wickedness of Europeans, like the malicious, like the mindfulness that they have, and the scheming and the level, the depth of it, it kills me, right? But you think about that and you say, there's a whole process, there's a whole system in place of like, we are an afterthought, always. So if we don't start looking at ourselves as the forethought, if we don't start really understanding, like, no, you are more special. I am more special than any other person, right? My son is more special, right, than any other person. Until we start really believing it, not just saying it to ourselves, but really believing it, embracing that, we move different. There was a point in my life where I don't feel like I loved myself enough. And when I started to, I moved different. My expectations were different, for myself and for anyone that came around. But it had to, I had to learn how to do it. My mother didn't know how to do it. She couldn't teach me. So a lot of us, unfortunately, we're learning through these bad experiences. I think that God, I really feel like it's a spiritual thing. I feel like God is saying, Darrell, your purpose is bigger than this. So like you said, the way people serve their time in the way that they come out. So another 18-year-old could have came home, been angry, been violent, been vicious, been about like, just forget everybody. I'm out for self because y'all did this wrong to me and I lost this time. It could be very different. Very different. And trust me, I know that dude too. So listening to you talk, I'm like, I'm amazed, and I want people that are watching it to understand why I'm kind of like going off on my tangent, because this is amazing to me. The level of stamina, mental stamina that it takes to be able to sustain and still maintain in a positive way and still want to give back and still want to serve. It's tremendous, and I don't want anyone that's watching it to miss that, so I just wanted to say it.
So just so this part can come out, I paused it. No, I understand this thing. I do this a lot, right? Plus I ran a magazine, so I know the editing. So what I was going to say, didn't ask you were, are we using audio for this or are you using the actual Zoom?
Both. All right. It's so great talking to you, man. Where are you speaking next? I heard you say that you were going to colleges and things like that. Where are you speaking next? Where can people hear you next? Do you have anything set up?
I'm actually doing Zooms. I do them so much. Like, I'm not one for so much promoting what I do. My thing is I just pop up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I can help, I help. But I wanted to go back to the note that you said about our processing being learning in our families, right? Let us be mindful that the number one thing you would hear in our community and our parents learn that we have to change was the idea of be good and go to school. Those are the things. Just be good and go to school. So you associate that. And then when you hit the world and realize that the people that are in place from Trump on down are not being good, then how are you a parent selling to your kid, don't do the right thing and it'll get you here, when you have an example like Trump to say you can do all the wrong things and have hate, it'll get you all the way where you need to be, right?
But that's why you said the point that you made, that you got to tell the truth. When there is truth, right?
That's it. In dating and anything, it is not hard to just get it out the way and tell the truth and live on that sword. And people don't want to do that. That's what we should be telling our kids, to identify the truth. Because in the Bible, it says that one thing we were talking about, the biblical aspect, it says, where there's no vision, the people perish. I'm always minded, where there's no vision, they perish. We have to get our vision right? Or we're going to see always the wrong thing. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
That is the formula for our change, for avoiding prison, and for not being in the situation we're in, is to be able to just tell the truth and identify the truth and keep telling it, not pausing. And, we can watch. Just pay attention, and you'll see that, we lose a brother today, right? And then, legends, icons. And then you watch 2 months, nobody's even bringing up those icons.
Right.
Because everybody has processed us as temporary moments of light. And then when it's Black life, we'll give you an example of one that we thought was good. When I'm saying that, we're all good. You understand? We're all good. The nature of us is all good. Right. It's what's formulated in those years that guide us down that path of destruction. There is guidance to destruction. Destruction doesn't just come. You've seen, you have to think about history, and babies have survived in Africa, in Netherlands, in the cold. You didn't see Eskimos saying, all of our children died, it was too cold. Right. No, they understood their land, and they could process and get through that because they understood what they needed to do. And from a 2-year-old kid, that kid becomes an Eskimo because it's saying it ain't too cold for me because I learned this early and I know how to survive it. We've got to be able to bring our people out in the winter and let them know exactly what type of spiritual cloth we need to survive what we're going through in this cold ass country. Real talk.
And I agree with that. And we also need to be able to trust one another enough to allow someone to embrace us in that way. I think that's hard too for us, is to really say, are you for real, and to have people that are sincere and really doing that. Well, Darrell, it's been awesome talking to you, man. I look forward to our next conversation. I want you to come back to the show. I want to see what's going on with these initiatives. I'm willing to sit down and brainstorm with you and be on whatever type of committee or board. If you need somebody to just like brainstorm, I'm down for that. I'm
down for the brainstorming. I don't think about committees and while people are building that, something else is falling. I'm just like, hit my sister up and be like, let's brainstorm on this application to be applied. Because everything that's applied on us is instantaneous. When they're running in there with these feds arresting these protesters doing what they want, they're not sitting down going over us with a plan. It's instantaneous and it pops up on us. We got to pop up like the State Farm chick. We got to be popping up in our own lives.
I agree.
All right, my sister.
I agree. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. This is another episode, Engage, Motivate, and Elevate. This is Mr. Darrell Jones, and I'm your host, Mo.
Thank you, guys. All right, great.
It is now time to elevate.
Time to motivate them.
Let's engage. It is now time to elevate.